All right, hello everybody. Welcome to my presentation on the main thing that you must remember is always smile, dealing with performance anxiety in cheerleading. If you have not already, I highly recommend you check out my other workshop as part of the PCA Virtual Summit that is on social identity in sport, because there are some common themes between these two. But yeah, you don't need to watch one to understand the other because all the information is here as well. But it's always nice to have that extra little connection. My name is David Dirk Smith, and I will be presenting today. You could tell that this is the second workshop that I recorded because I'm a little more relaxed in this one. Because the first one, I, had a little bit of performance anxiety. But now that I'm a little more relaxed and got a better rhythm going on here, so I hope you will enjoy this workshop as well. If you did not see my first workshop, let me introduce myself. My name is Dirk Smith. I am a PhD student at the German Sports University in Cologne. I am studying visual motor calibration and motivational climate as a complex system. I have a bachelor's degree in sport and exercise science and a master's degree in sport and exercise psychology. Some of the jobs that I work and the roles that I have, I currently work for Compete Sports Diversity as the managing editor and director of education. Many of you are familiar with Compete because I have reported a lot on PCA in the past, just because I love everything that y'all are doing, and I'm trying to get the word out as much as I can about how awesome y'all are. For Compete, we do a lot of online media as well as in print media, specifically focusing on LGBTQ sports, and also do a lot of continuing education development and trainings on sports diversity. When people say they want to be more diverse and inclusive, and we focus on, okay, well, you say you're more diverse and inclusive, but are you actually being more diverse and inclusive? So our job is to actually help people and organizations and groups. Again, groups, go see my topic on social identity, but to help organizations and groups be more diverse and inclusive, right? So that's a lot of the work that we do there. I also work for Virtual Sports Psych, which is a private organization that focuses on networking and community development for the sports psychology field, as well as the professionals within the field. So I do a lot of work as a community manager, working with a social network of sports psychologists, as well as educational development for this group, including conducting live workshops and organizing a virtual summit every year that is not unlike the PCA virtual summit, but for mine, it's specifically for sports psychologists. So in addition, I actually do work in sports too. I'm a strength and conditioning coach and sports psychologist for the senior men's team with Sports Club Brule, which is a professional soccer team here in Germany. And I also work for SC Giannis, Sports Club Giannis, as both a strength and conditioning coach and competitive swimming coach. And SC Giannis is the local LGBTQ sports club here in Cologne. My personal mission is to empower people to express themselves and find community through sport, which aligns a lot with these other organizations that I work for, and do a lot of work in this regard just because of, my own personal motivations and passions for helping people discover how powerful sport can be, especially because it's had such a huge influence on my life. And I'm sure that, as you know, as a member of PCA, how much being able to be a part of an organization like this and to be able to participate and do cheerleading and participate and compete in sports in this regard can also help empower your life as well. So for me, these are all very important things. So let's get into it. For this workshop, our plan and goals, we are going to talk about sport group support and stress appraisal. Again, if you go back to the previous workshop, there'll be some linking information there. We're going to talk about some of the stressors in cheerleading, how stress stress influences emotions, which influences performance effect. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in details. We'll talk about emotional regulation strategies, how to regulate your emotions in 5 steps, the importance of social support, and of course, finish it up with a key takeaway. So we'll jump right into it. We're going to talk a little bit about sport group support and stress appraisal. Again, linking back to that workshop on social identity, if you remember, one of the 4 key takeaways was that social identity is the basis for sport, group support, and stress appraisal. Specifically, stressors in the environment are perceived to be threatening to one's self and well-being, which is based on one's own sense of self in relation to their environment and group. So how do you relate to the people that are around you, and what kind of environment do you find yourself in? All has great influence on the kind of stressors that you experience and perceive. It's also subjective, so make sure that you consider that the things that are stressors for you may not be stressors for other people, or vice versa. Maybe something that is not a stressor for you is actually quite a stressor for somebody else. So while the experience of stress is entirely subjective, so is the way that us as individuals react to that stress. Stress appraisal is how we determine the cause of stressors within any situation and identify our reactions to the stressors, because a lot of the ways that we respond to stressors help to influence and dictate our actions and behaviors, right? It's important to consider that stressors are not just limited to the performance or sport. So they can come from any external sources outside of the direct environment or the direct group, but can also influence your performance within the context. So external stressors could include, of course, physical stressors such as injuries, fitness level, feeling sick, jet lag, anything like that, right? You also have mental stressors such as, mental health, lack of focus, overload, burnout, depression, anxiety, any of these kinds of things. And then you have, of course, the social stressors, relationships, social identity, work, school, family, pretty much anything that involves any kind of social situation. Cheerleading as a sport is quite stressful. Of course, that can be said about any sport. I say specifically cheerleading, let's talk about some of the specific stressors in cheerleading. So before I go into the list, let's take a moment, think about what are some specific stressors within cheerleading itself that you may experience. And like I said, they could be physical stressors, mental stressors, and social stressors. So this may include performing in front of an audience, performing in front of people of particular importance, right? So your parents are in the crowd, your spouse is in the crowd, maybe your kids, friends, people you want to impress, all these kinds of things can add pressure and stress to a performance, right? Because you want to make sure that, to these particular people of importance, you want to, you want to do a good job. You want to show off and show them how good you are. So that can be stressful. Another stressor might include learning new skills and moves or routines, right? So a lot of the stunts, a lot of the choreography that I've seen PCA teams do, you may make it look easy, but we all know it's not easy, and it takes time, and it takes practice, and it takes a lot of mistakes before you really get it right. So that can be stressful. You also have, like I said, learning, memorizing, and performing complex choreography. So it's not just, a high kick and a split, but, it's, all sorts of steps and all sorts of moves and crazy things. And you have to get that in the right order. And you have to make sure that, you're coordinating your actions with your teammates, so that make sure that everybody's in the right place at the right time to do the right thing, and so on and so forth. So of course that takes time, that takes practice, and it could be stressful. Coordinating, again, the timing of movements with teammates. You want to make sure that everybody's in the right place at the right time and knows exactly what to do, because some of these stunts can get quite intense. So you want to make sure that everybody's there and focused, so that safety is of course the number one consideration. Performing stunts where safety is paramount. I mean, I've seen some amazing stunts, and part of the reason why people love seeing cheerleaders is because you get to perform some really cool stunts that are very intense and very ambitious and a lot of fun. But it's also kind of scary. It's a bit stressful, right? Especially when you're first learning how to do it. Of course, there's also like some more social pressure, like interacting with the crowd. Specifically is PCA, because it's being able to may either solicit donations, or you gotta get that buy-in from the crowd, right? You want to get the crowd to really buy into what you're selling when you perform. So that could, create some stress as well. Again, think about what else. I mean, I'm only kind of scratching the surface here, I feel like. So what else do you think in your own experiences could be stressful? Now, kind of bridging it over, like I just mentioned, PCA as a group or an organization has stressors that are unique to it. Again, charitable cheerleading, so soliciting donations. So having to take a bucket, go out into the public and ask strangers to donate money to a charity. You only got a couple seconds to tell people what the organization is and try to convince them to pay attention to you long enough that you can get the mission and the cause out there, so that people can understand and know what they're donating to help them, encourage them to donate, right? That could be stressful, especially if you're not very good at public speaking, or you're introverted or something like that. So that definitely takes a bit of stress. You also have the performance aspect of it, right? So performing for groups and various, especially non-sport events, right? Like, you can go to a sporting event and it's one thing to see cheerleaders, but all of a sudden you're going to um, conferences, or random events regarding organizations that have nothing to do with sports and nothing to do with cheerleading, nothing to do with anything. Now you got to perform for them. So it's like, how do you adapt the performance to reflect what the setting is for this particular event? So that can be stressful as well. Of course, there's also the publicity aspect of it, right? Because everybody's got to know who the PCA is and who are the member teams, and what is your mission. People got to know. So you got to do the publicity, right? Just recently, I want to give a shout out to Lindsay Miller, who her and a teammate from Cheer Colorado appeared on TV, the local news in Colorado. They did an appearance where they were interviewed by the anchors, and they were live on air, and being able to be interviewed and talk about what the mission of the organization is, and also do a performance, right? They actually did perform for the cameras on TV. So something like that, that's a stressor, because you're live on camera. One of my favorite experiences was last year at the Sin City Classic, when there was the we were on the cheer bus, right? And we were traveling around to the different sports. And when we arrived at the Quidditch, or sorry, it's Quidditch, but now it's changed its name to can't remember what it's changed its name to all of a sudden, which is ironic because we did an article on it. So, but yeah, so we traveled to that sport, and they had a camera set up, a live feed for people that can tune in online and watch the tournament as it unfolds. And nobody from the cheer bus really knew that the live feed was taking place until after we got there, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, hey, we are going to go out there and do the 60-second routine in front of the live camera, in front of this live internet audience. We had, the team, I shouldn't say we, because I also had a camera. So I was just, filming the whole thing myself, but everybody was used to me. But it was this live broadcast that created a stressor, because all of a sudden you had a short amount of few seconds to run out there, get in position, and all of a sudden now you've got this internet audience all watching you, and you got 60 seconds to pump out this routine, finish it, and then run off the field again before the gameplay had to start up again. So, and I remember specifically witnessing that, and I could tell that the anxiety in the group was a little bit higher this time, because this was our third stop of the day. And the anxiety of the group was a little bit higher than it had been for the first two stops, because, all of a sudden now it's, you don't know who the audience is, right? You're performing for a live broadcast, and it's going to be recorded, and all these other things. So people were, preparing for it in different ways, like some of the ways that we're going to talk about here soon. But it was interesting to see that, because that was a stressor that all of a sudden, people weren't expecting. So, that was very unique as well. You also have the uniqueness of the locations in which to perform. So the specific stop on the cheer bus was a unique location, just because of the way that the camera was set up, and the sports event itself, only had a 60-second break that barely gave the PCA group enough time to get in there and do it. But you also have the cheer competition at the Sin City Classic was inside a ballroom, right? So all of a sudden you had to realize, okay, don't throw too high, because you might smack the chandelier in the ceiling. I'm like, okay, that's not something you would expect to deal with as an athlete, but it was there. Or for example, there was, again, when Lindsay and Cheer Colorado, they were at the TV studio, right? So the TV studio was a lot smaller. The ceiling was a lot lower, and they had other things like expensive equipment all around you. So it's like you had to be careful to make sure that you had your routine set up so that you can perform and do the stunts safely in that unique environment, because last thing you want to do is live on air go crash into the green screen or something like that. So that was also very unique in regard to the location. You also had the organizing and coordinating of various member teams. So PCA as an organization represents different member teams. So you got Cheer Colorado, Cheer Salt Lake, Cheer New York, Capital Cheer, and Cheer Austin, and a bunch of other ones. But everybody's pretty much, again, social identity identifies with the same group. Everybody still maybe doesn't quite know each other on a personal level, or they haven't quite learned. They're still trying to kind of find a rhythm with each other, right? And then you have to bring all those people together, and then you have to say, okay, well, here we're gonna all work together, and here's what we're gonna do here, and here's how we're gonna do that, and stuff like that. So that can be stressful as well. And tying into that is to be able to learn new choreography at an event, right? So when you bring in these different member teams together, for say Sin City Classic or Gay Games or World Pride or something like that, a lot of these times these groups are getting together for the first time, and a lot of people are meeting each other for the first time. So you got to teach choreography within that moment that you're planning to perform at this event, and you have to make sure that everybody is able to work together to ensure that the choreography goes well and the stunts are performed safely. So you have maybe a limited amount of practice time before the performance to get all that done. And so that could be stressful as well, just because it's maybe not ideal in terms of the amount of practice and time that you would have to prepare for it, but you got to get it done, right? So that can create a stressor as well. One thing to consider is that stress creates emotions, and emotions influence your performance. So for this purpose, the definition of emotions are the evocation of thoughts and behaviors that influence how people feel, experience, and express themselves. And there are three types of emotions. There are the physiological emotions, three types of emotional responses, because emotions, like I said, are all one thing. So you have three types of emotional responses. The physiological responses, which are things like your heart rate increases, your perspiration, your respiration, your face gets red, or something else like that. That's a physiological response to an emotion. And then you have your cognitive response to the emotion. So you all of a sudden you're becoming more focused, or your attention changes, or the way that you perceive your environment all of a sudden changes. So the way that you process information and act upon it is your cognitive response to these emotions. And then, of course, the final effect of that would be your behavior. So how does your actual behavior change as a result of these emotions, right? So you have a facial expression, right? If you're angry, you're gonna scowl your face, or if you are happy, you're gonna smile, or you're gonna laugh, or something like that. So it's your facial expressions and maybe taking actions. So if you're angry, you might want to go and attack or something like that, or maybe if you're sad, you're gonna start crying, or if you're happy, you're gonna start jumping up and down and screaming or something like that. So all sorts of different things that can happen in regard to how your behavior is affected by your emotions. So in performance, the way that we can help channel these emotions to work for us and have a positive effect on our emotions comes down to emotion regulation. So emotion regulation is the automatic or deliberate use of strategies to initiate, maintain, modify, or display emotions. So when we talk about, say, a specific emotion such as anxiety, is being able to say, because everybody experiences anxiety, and anxiety can be defined in many ways and is the result of many different things. There's chronic anxiety and acute anxiety. For this purposes, we're talking about more acute anxiety, that is performance anxiety. So being able to feel the anxiety when you're preparing for a performance, right? Because cheerleading is a performance sport. So emotion regulation would help you to better create strategies so that when you experience performance anxiety, you can use it in a way that helps you to channel your emotional energy into a positive performance. So, in emotion regulation, one's ability to regulate their emotions is correlated with and a part of the mental conditioning that helps athletes to improve their resilience, judgment, and decision making skills, as well as creativity and mental toughness. Because, like I said, we all experience emotions like anxiety and so on when we are preparing to perform as an athlete, right? But if we can learn how to condition our mind as much as we would condition our body to prepare for this kind of performance, then we can use that to build in resilience, improve our judgment and decision making skills, creativity, and build mental toughness, which are all positively correlated with strong performance and successful athletes. So emotional regulation strategies are employed when there is a difference between your current and desired emotions. So let's say you're experiencing the performance anxiety, and it is expressing itself in a way that is detrimental to your performance. So in this case, it would be undesired, or for example, current emotions, but not desired emotions, right? So then you would want to employ emotional regulation strategies that would take you from where you're currently experiencing the emotion up to a point where you want to experience the emotion. So with that, we are going to eventually talk about that. But first, we want to talk about two distinct types of emotional regulation motivation, because these desired emotions, it really depends on what your goals are, what your experiences are as an individual, what you want to get out of the performance, a lot of things that are unique to you. And I cannot tell you, nobody can tell you what you want to get out of it except for you. But I can tell you there's two basic types of motivation when it comes to emotion regulation. Hedonic, that is a motivation to use emotions to feel better, right? So for example, an athlete who uses cheerleading to help release stress, to find happiness, express themselves, that's all hedonic, right? Because those are emotions that help you to feel good about yourself or feel better. And those are good things. Then you have the other type, instrumental. Instrumental is motivation to use emotions to achieve a desired goal. For example, the same athlete, having learned from experience that they perform best when experiencing anxious energy, might employ strategies such as observing the audience, watching competitors, or talking to teammates prior to performance. Crap. All right, well, I'm gonna have to cut that out. Okay. Well, so then there's the second type, instrumental. And instrumental is motivation to use emotions to achieve a desired goal, right? So say you want to raise enough money for, you want to hit a certain fundraising goal for your donations, right? So, you want to be able to develop your emotions to be able to create a positive interaction with people you're soliciting donations from, or you want to be able to use your performance anxiety to help you channel that energy into building confidence during your performance so you can win or you can get a personal best or something like that. So those are the key differences. So one is, again, hedonic is to feel better, and instrumental is to achieve a specific goal. So when we want to talk about emotional regulation strategies, we want to talk about how athletes will try to regulate emotions if they believe that doing so will facilitate performance. And this is rooted in the belief that certain emotions associated with optimal performance will play a role in emotion regulation. So if you say, okay, in your experience as an athlete, and this could be in any sport, but say for cheerleading, right? You say, okay, well, feeling happy and smiling is rooted with a positive association with a loud applause from the audience, right? So they say, okay, well, you really want to engage the audience. Well, cheerleaders need to smile because smiling cheerleaders give a better response from the audience. So that's a basic association to say, okay, now we can make sure that all of our teammates and our cheerleading friends who are smiling during the performance, so we can get more buy-in from the audience. Or for example, in your own experience, right? Like For me, I once had so for me, I'm a competitive swimmer, and I once had a race where I was really angry. And I don't even remember why I was angry. It had nothing to do with the actual race, but I was really angry. And I was right before I went to go and compete and swim. So I stepped up and I was really angry and I got into the pool and I started swimming and I swam the best freaking race of my life at the time. I was like, oh crap, that was a really good time. Like, oh damn, okay. So that was awesome. But after that, I was like, I wonder if maybe if I just like really make myself angry, that will help me get better times, right? And so I made that association between anger and positive performance. I learned later on that no, that wasn't the case. So for me, it was like, okay, well, I tried it, worked well once, didn't work again. Okay, ended that association. But sometimes they would persist, and it's really unique to the individual based on your own way that you respond, right? So your own emotional responses to different emotions. So when we want to talk about strategies, we're going to talk about 4 strategies with 2 focuses. The first is antecedent focused. That is, there's going to be the relaxation. So you want to be able to learn how to relax and control the way that you express the emotion so that you're not letting yourself become too tense or too wound up, right? So you want to focus on being able to relax. And this includes like slow paced breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation, meditation, mindfulness, anything that you can do just to help you relax. Okay. The second is redirection. That is directing your attention elsewhere. So, this could include listening to music. Some people, they get maybe anxiety from looking at the crowd. So maybe you just want to avoid looking at the crowd, or anything that you can do where you just redirect your attention away from whatever the stressor is that you are experiencing until you have to, deal with it, right? And then you have the response focused strategies. So you have self-talk. Self-talk is really awesome and it's really easy and it's really basic. So in self-talk, you're focusing on the positive aspects, reflecting on your mistakes as opportunities to improve upon and learn new skills. So, say you do a good job, right? You're like, oh yeah, great job. I did so great. That was so fabulous. That was so awesome, But say you did not do a good job, right? And it's easy to kind of get down on yourself with some of that negative self-talk and, I was horrible. I did blah, blah, all that stuff, right? But then refocusing the self-talk into a positive opportunity to improve upon, right? So let's say, okay, yeah, maybe that performance wasn't the best. So, maybe this was good, but I need to train more on that, or maybe I need to practice this certain move again, or, maybe I can, work with a teammate on developing this skill or something like that, right? So being able to channel that self-talk into like, okay, well, this is a learning opportunity. And again, that ties also into self-reflection, which is based on what you did well and what you can improve upon. So, you compliment yourself when you did something good and you feel like you really nailed it. And then, knowing, okay, well, we always have room for improvement, right? Every single person, the most successful athletes in the world will still tell you they have room to improve. Okay. Nobody's perfect. Nobody will ever be perfect because there's always something to improve upon, no matter who you are, no matter what you're doing. So an important part of self-reflection is to say, okay, what can I improve upon? And then being able to think about that. And then, when you go back and practice and you train, then you could start to improve upon that, right? And finally, again, using that constructive and supportive language, especially on yourself, because we are our own worst critics. So, I know I love PCA because y'all are so supportive of each other. And there's always so much positive self-talk when talking to each other, but it's easy to get into our own heads and put ourselves down, even when we're hearing positive things from our friends, right? So the most important thing that you can do is basically tell yourself the same kind of positive things that you tell your teammates and your friends, right? So you are doing a good job, and you are kicking some butt, and you are slaying it, and you are doing some great things. And even if you have things that you need to improve upon, well, that is no excuse for negative self-talk. It's still something that you can use in a constructive and supportive manner. Oh, look, maybe I can improve upon this. Here, maybe I'll ask so-and-so to help me out with learning how to do another skill or something like that. So really remember that you are the one who needs this positive self-talk the most. Period. Okay, moving on. Another response-focused strategy, of course, is imagery, visualization. So in this case, you can help relieve a lot of your performance anxiety simply through mental rehearsal. That is, you know what the routine is, you know what the choreography is, you know what the steps are to perform certain skills, stunts, moves, whatever, right? Well, if you find yourself getting nervous or feeling anxious before you have to do it, rehearse the routine, rehearse the skills, rehearse the steps in your head before, get those steps down. Visualize yourself performing the routine in your mind, okay? And you can visualize yourself from the first person perspective, that is from your own eyes. What would you see if you were out there on stage right in that moment doing it, right? Okay, so you see the audience, okay, now you're doing this and you're doing that. Okay, the sensations of what you're experiencing around you, right? What you see, what you smell, what you feel, what you hear, things like that. Rehearse all of that and keep it running through your mind. Prepare yourself to say, okay, I'm going to be hearing loud music. I'm going to be hearing the audience. I'm going to be hearing my teammates. I'm going to be hearing the sounds of the floor, or something like that. Okay, I'm going to be seeing, such and such things happen, and I'm going to be seeing this person in this point, and then run through that routine. Get the rehearsal of what it is that you're going to be doing, and rehearse it in that environment. And then do the same thing from the third person perspective, right? So imagine if you were an audience member watching you perform this routine. Then think again about all the things that you perceive in all the things that you sense in that environment, and then watch yourself from the third person perspective. Say, okay, how would this look how do you think it would look from the audience's perspective, right? And again, run through those steps in your head, rehearse it and go through each moment. The more detailed you can get in mental rehearsal and imagery and visualization, the better. And again, you can do this before you go on stage. You can do this the night before as you're going to sleep. You can do this, before practice, after practice, riding the bus, maybe not driving a car because, you want to be focused on the road in that case. But in any and every opportunity where, your perception doesn't need to be necessarily focused on another task, especially those times when you're kind of starting to experience that anxiety, mental rehearsal is really helpful in this regard. So use it. Moving on. So I know we just talked about some strategies. Now we're going to talk about some steps. We got emotion regulation in 5 steps. And this is a pretty simple, just kind of breakdown, which pretty much anybody who experiences emotions and has some kind of basic ability to regulate their emotions already experiences these things, even if you don't necessarily know exactly what the steps are. But in this case, it helps to, kind of think about the formal language of what you basically already know. Okay. So in 5 steps to regulate your emotions, the first, of course, is the situation selection, right? So you are putting yourself into a given situation that you choose to put yourself into, right? So, you joined PCA and you went to the practices and you learned the routines, and now you're going to these certain performances, right? So you chose, what practices to go to. You chose what performances you want to do. So you wouldn't put yourself in this situation if you knew you couldn't handle it, right? So the fact that you're already here shows that you can already handle it, right? The second, of course, is the situation modification, because even if you're in that situation, maybe you need to adjust some things here and there to kind of make it a little easier for you, right? So that's where you got situation modification, which is an attempt to modify the external aspects of the environment in order to attain a desired emotion or avoid an undesirable emotion. So in this case, it would be something like, again, going back to those emotion regulation strategies, right? So you have your relaxation techniques, being able to, engage with slow paced breathing, or being able to mentally rehearse, or, redirecting your attention onto something else, right? Like you love performing, but still sometimes the crowds, can cause some anxiety. So then you choose to, focus on something else that has nothing to do with the crowd. So these are all things that help you modify a situation so that you can either attain the desired emotion or you can avoid the undesirable emotions. But an important thing to consider here is that suppressing your emotions, especially the undesirable ones, do not help. Okay? Because by suppressing these emotions, you're only going to make the problem worse later. It can exacerbate the cognitive and physiological responses. And ultimately, when it rears its ugly head, because it will rear its ugly head, it will have a negative impact on your performance, right? So, and especially in cheerleading, you do not want to, have a sudden emotional expression that you are unexpecting or you do not want to have at the wrong moment, because of course safety is paramount. So making sure that when you experience these emotions, you learn how to deal with them rather than just suppress them, because suppressing them is ultimately not going to help you out in the long run. Okay. The third step is attention deployment. So you can direct your attention onto specific stimuli in certain situations when it cannot be avoided, right? With this, say again, you cannot always avoid being in front of a crowd, and you will hear the crowd and they will be loud and they will be right there. So instead of directing your attention on the crowd, which may give you an undesirable emotion, maybe you just focus on, you fixate your gaze, your eye visual focus on just like maybe something random in the back, right? So you're not looking at the audience, you're looking behind the audience, or you're just focusing on, say you work with a teammate, right? That's the great thing about social support is you have teammates that you can share these experiences with and help develop these strategies together, which we'll talk about later. But say you have, you're going to experience these emotions in certain situations that you cannot avoid. So you can work with a teammate to say, okay, when this experience happens, then you can direct your attention towards that teammate to help you overcome and redirect your focus so that you can avoid that undesirable emotion and still maintain the focus that you need to maintain, right? And so the way that you deploy your attention in this regard is a very useful strategy when it comes to regulated emotions, because then you can depend on your teammates, or you can find other strategies, like I said, maybe choosing something else to fix on the crowd, or just being able to refocus your attention on something specific in your mind so that you're avoiding the thing that you might otherwise impact you that you cannot avoid. Okay. Of course, then you also have your cognitive change, right? So and this kind of comes down to association. So you want to be able to change the meaning of the event. So for example, let's say you attend a specific event where you have a bad experience, right? And that bad experience causes undesirable emotions. Maybe it's an experience you want to forget, but it's associated with this event, right? So then what you can focus on is, how do you change the meaning of this event, right? So instead of, and again, this is where you can use that imagery and self-talk, and say, okay, well, maybe you experienced, you went to an event, a competition, and you failed on a stunt, and somebody got hurt, right? And that, unfortunately, it happens. So that can impact how you perceive and the meaning of a certain event. So then you can change the meaning of that event and say, okay, yeah, unfortunately, this bad thing happened. Well, now how can you take that experience and the impact of that event and change it into something else, so that when you think about that, it's, oh, maybe instead of it being a traumatic event or a bad event or something that causes an undesirable emotion, and change the meaning of that to oh, well, this was the opportunity that I learned how to do this skill, or I became closer to this person, or I was able to try something different, or just something that you can do to shift the your cognitive perception of that particular event. And again, this is where self-talk and imagery can really come in handy in this regard. And then finally, you have, of course, the response modulation. That is how the athlete regulates the physiological and cognitive aspects of your response as directly as possible. So, being able to, use warm-up exercises to increase your heart rate, focus and arousal, or progressive muscle relaxation to relax your muscles, things like that. So how can you, use your own toolbox basically, to change the emotional responses so that maybe you're more prepared for it, right? You can listen to music with different tempos that can influence the arousal, playing games and exercise that increase focus or problem solving skills, anything like that you can use that can help have a positive impact on your response so that when you do experience these emotions, it's not as extreme and it's a little easier for you to process and deal with, basically. So I don't know if you remember my workshop on social identity in sport. At the end, we also talked a lot about social support. So the great thing about being as part of a group that you identify with, again, social identity, is that a lot of, basically everybody goes through the same thing together. Everybody has to go and deal with performing in front of a crowd and learning new in complex choreography, learning new stunts, right? So your teammates are also dealing with a lot of the same emotions and anxieties in relation to their performance as you do, even if they don't express it always, right? Because everybody experiences and expresses their emotions in their own unique way. And everybody's emotion is valid, even if they don't necessarily show it. Okay. I guarantee anybody you talk to has experienced a lot of, these emotions at some point or another. And then, the more that you experience them, the more you learn how to regulate them. Okay. Group cohesion is very important here because, I know with PCA, there's a lot of emphasis on group cohesion and group support. Group cohesion is positively correlated with social support, motivation, and performance. This allows members of the in-group to help each other identify their emotional states associated with best and worst performances, which again are unique among each athlete, but every single person who in there has had a great performance and a worse performance, right? And we've all seen, how do we deal with that emotion when we have a bad performance or we have a great performance, so everybody's been there and they can help recognize what those signs are, even if you're not necessarily expressing it, right? You can also examine the use and effectiveness of different emotional regulation strategies. Some people might find more benefit out of visualization, whereas other people might find more benefit out of self-talk or relaxation exercises or something like that, right? So again, not everything is going to work for everybody, but it's important and good to try different strategies so you can figure out what works best for you. And then the ones that work well for you, you keep doing, and the ones that maybe don't work well for you, you don't do, right? Help each other examine the perceived cause of their feelings, and if desired, help them reappraise, right? Again, you're talking to people who have all been through these same experiences before. So, you can help each other just kind of like talking through these things, right? Like trying to understand what's causing these emotions. Is it something surface level or is it something a little more deeper? I'm not saying that you're not a counselor, you're not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but you're a friend, right? And you can help a person kind of retrace their steps into what's been going on with them. And it's just talking to them and listening to them and helping each other to find what are the cause of these feelings, because if you can identify the cause, it's a little easier to work through them. And then finally, you can recognize that performance management strategies are also useful for emotional regulation strategies, right? So how do you manage your performance as a cheerleader, right? You go to trainings, you practice these things, you learn how to you practice new skills by repetition, right? Well, the exact same way that you manage your performance on a physical aspect of it are the great ways that you also do to manage your emotions in the same regard. So you can use a lot of the same strategies that tend to have a lot of crossover between the two. So like I said at the beginning, it's nothing that you don't already know. In this case, we're just kind of putting it into some words, but again, it's stuff that you're already familiar with. So, we're not exactly breaking new ground here. I love group cohesion, and I feel like everybody, like for me as a sports psychologist, I'm like everything comes out of group cohesion. So With that, building group cohesion involves activities both within the context of the group, right? So doing the practices, trainings, fundraisers, social events, competitions, so on, right? Outside of the context of the group as well. So doing non-cheerleading things or non-PCA things or non-cheer, member team things, right? So holiday parties, going hiking, doing dinners, going on traveling adventures, just going to weddings, going to, I don't know, all sorts of stuff, right? All these things are very important so that you can really get to know each other as a not just as as teammates, but as friends and as and some, like they'll say, like even family, right? Like you got your cheer fam, stuff like that. So this is all a major component of group cohesion. And the closer you are as a group and the more you can, bounce off each other and stuff like that, then the easier it is to find the social support, which ultimately, again, helps to improve your performance and going back again to my workshop on social identity and sport, increases the in-group buy-in. Okay. So key takeaway here. Training your mental conditioning for cheerleading and performance is just as important as training your physical conditioning. So as much as you show up to practice the routines and the stunts and all that stuff, you also need to show up to practice the mental aspects of it, the emotional regulation strategies, the visualization, the relaxation, the positive self-talk, redirection, and all those things, right? As individual athletes, you can challenge yourself and learn from these experiences to enhance your own mental conditioning. In turn, as a group, be it a stunt group, a team, or PCA as an entire organization, you can all come together to help each other utilize these tools and build upon your successes as individuals and as a group together to strive even further, which comes back to, again, the other workshop on how collective endeavors can enhance our capabilities as humans and our human capacity as a whole. Yeah, that's all I got. Don't think I can end on anything cooler than that. I hope so. So thank you. Again, I would love to connect with y'all. So definitely look me up and get in touch. I definitely want some feedback on my not only this workshop, but my other workshop on social identity. So feel free to send me some feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like, what I could improve upon, anything like that. Or if you have any questions or you have any comments or anything like that, please get in touch. I am most active on Instagram, also Facebook, but I'm pretty active elsewhere. So yeah, I appreciate it. My bottom here, the references I have. So got some couple of papers here. If you're interested, I can send you those PDFs as well. And I will also be attending the Sin City Classic in January. So I will look forward to seeing you there. And that's all I got. So thank you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. And I will hopefully see you all soon. Bye.